Hi, my name is Kayla Kirkland, and this is my fashion marketing presentation. Let's get started. So first, I'm going to be touching on consumer behavior. So consumer behavior is essential in fashion marketing because it makes us be able to accurately forecast and predict consumer wants, consumer needs, when you understand the behavior. Once you understand why they're making those decisions, you can backtrack and accurately forecast and predict what they're going to do next, essentially. So you're able to market more accurately to consumers who are your target market when you understand how they operate. And you can understand how to attract your target consumers and where to attract them from. So different consumers, depending on your target market and your customer segment, gets their media or their advertisements different ways. So once you understand the psychology and their behavior and why they're making those decisions, you can far more accurately predict how to get your product and business in front of them a lot easier. Next, we have some internal factors driving consumer decisions. So this little infographic that I put together. So on the inside, we have the lifestyle, attitudes, personality, perception, motivation, and values of the consumer. So those are really the internal factors that drive their decision. And then on the kind of the outside, we have the purchase, retention, advocacy, awareness, and consideration. So that's kind of how they interact with different brands and kind of that retention and purchase process that, again, this internal driving factors really affect. So to dive a little bit more into that, the 6 internal factors within the infographic plays a huge role on consumer purchasing habits. So to touch on a few of them, perception is impacted by how we process something using our senses. Attitude is impacted by the cognitive element surrounding an object, and motivation is to satisfy the need in a hierarchy that can be split into the 5 sections, with need for self-actualization at the top and physical survival need at the bottom, which we'll get a little bit more into that pyramid later on in the presentation. And the personality of a brand has a lot to do with the consumer psychology and how the visual and all aspects of the brand really makes them feel about the company, about the brand. It's not as much just about the product, but how the brand presents themselves in general. So a couple examples, brands impacting your perception, is perfume ads. So in different magazines, they'll put different test strips so that you'll be able to essentially try the product. So this targets your sense of smell and also visual. It usually has a really visually interactive or visually engaging, I should say, ad that goes along with the scent strip so you can try out their fragrance. And then a good example of brand personification is Duolingo. So they've done really well marketing their mascot, the green bird, and really making it have its own personality and act like a human, essentially, which is done very well for that company. So next we have some external influences. So that can kind of be further divided up in social and then cultural. So for social influencers, family is the first reference group that a child experiences. So a reference group is any person or group serving as a point of comparison or a frame of reference for an individual, especially when that individual is forming his own beliefs and behaviors. So growing up as a child, your family is your first reference group. So you're kind of learning everything as comparison to what they do and how they act. So that plays a huge role into an external factor. Friends have another huge role in someone's conformity. So that kind of brings into subcultures and social class, kind of the stereotype of the high school type conformity. Everyone's trying to fit into a box, fit in a group. So those outside friends have a huge influence in someone's personality, the way they express themselves, which directly relates to fashion, the fashion industry. And then also cultural, the greatest single demographic indicator of consumer spending is income. The amount of money people spend varies according to income level, so that's just the biggest differentiator between different individuals of different demographics. To dive a little bit more into other demographic segmentation, we have age, gender, income, education, family lifestyle, religion, and socioeconomic status. So all of those really put together a good snapshot or image of a segment of individuals. So that's that demographic segmentation does a really good job of pinpointing exactly who they want their target customer to be. Once you have this type of info, it's easier to target them through different marketing strategies, which we will get into in a little bit later. We also have technology's role in all this. So how does it affect? So it affects the way customers are targeted. So this kind of goes back to the demographics of age, depending if you're Gen Z or millennials. It depends how you want intake certain mediums. So, for example, my age group is more on TikTok than my parents' age group is. So, depending on how old you are, and just a lot of different demographics, technology's role really helps you be able to target different individuals. Also, just ads in general. For example, if you went through like a Meta Instagram, Facebook ad, you can actually give an age range of people you want to target. So this just gives another accurate, streamlined way to physically target a certain demographic due to all the social media accounts having this info and data on their individuals and having their demographics, essentially a lot of big data on them. And also affects materialism. So materialism is the importance that we attach to things we own. So constantly seeing what other people have, comparing it to us, a big part of social media is that, which brings into effect the social media influence marketing. So that plays a big role in technology, but specifically more social media on that front. So my example that I chose to dive into was Wednesday Addams Corps. So this was a Netflix TV show that aired in 2022, and as you can tell from the Google Trends search, it really spiked when that show came out and it went really viral. And with it came a whole fashion core that went with it. So she wears a lot of black, a lot of lace, a lot of skirts, and all those outfits and styles started trending strictly due to the show. Next, we're getting into a few different marketing strategies. So the first, the 4Ps to the 4Cs. So the 4Ps marketing mix provides a framework for managing marketing activities through the lens of a brand. So that's the product, the price, the place, and the promotion. And then it switches over to the 4Cs, which signifies a switch from that traditional marketing mix to a customer-centric approach. So product changes to customer wants and need, price changes to the cost of the customer, place changes to convenience, and promotion changes to communication. So these two marketing strategies just show the difference between looking at it through the lens of a brand and then also the lens of the customer, which both of these are vitally important. Just depends on what lens or marketing strategy you want to view through. Next, we have the STP strategies. So that's the segmentation, targeting, and positioning. So segmentation is splitting the market into different customers, different groups of customers. So again, using those demographics, psychographics, characteristics such as age, behaviors, attitudes, product preference, which we talked about a little bit earlier with the different demographic sectors. And then targeting is actually picking one of those certain segments that you identified to focus on marketing efforts. So for example, a brand will have a couple different target segments that might use, let's say skateboarding, for example. You have, the young skateboarders that maybe just do it for a hobby. Then you maybe have a little bit more professional skateboarders that take it more seriously. All users of the product, but might have different demographic, different reason for using the products. So once you've identified the different segmentations of the customers, you can target a specific one. And once you have picked your certain segment, you can start positioning your brand within the market in order to target a specific segment. So if that skateboard brand, let's say, wanted to go after a little bit more professional and not beginner skateboarders, then they could position themselves, for example, maybe working with other professional skateboarders so that the brand doesn't come off as a beginner brand and it's dealing with a lot of more professional people who are good at using the product. And okay, next we have the quantitative research. So quantitative research is objective and can be conducted in two different ways. The first is through surveys, and the second is by observation. For those surveys, questions are generally close-ended with responses such as a number or a yes or no in order to get that good quality data. And some examples of how companies or brands could use this is a company might send surveys to customers and collect data in order to get statistics about which styles they're interested in buying. This way, the company receives info about which styles are well received and liked by customers. And a brand might reorganize and merchandise its storefront window, and by observation, they can see how many more customers walk into the store due to the mannequin and due to the outside window would affect the amount of people that walk in the store. Just good research and data to be able to have. And then on the flip side, qualitative research is subjective. It has its roots in psychology, and it requires a skilled researcher in order to conduct the study. So instead of quantitative is the closed-ended questions in order to get that research data, qualitative is open-ended questions towards a focus group. And so a focus group is a gathering in which a small group of perhaps 8 to 12 consumers led by the moderator, as I mentioned, discuss and offer opinions about a product, service, or other marketing-related topics. So a good example of one might do that is a fragrance or scent brand. They might want to use focus groups in order to get real potential customer feedback about the product, especially since a product like that, you can't evaluate it just by looking at it. So it would be very beneficial for the brand to have in-person feedback. Next, marketing campaign. Using my Wednesday Addams themed research that I did, there was a marketing campaign with Hot Topic back in 2022 when the TV show did really well. The items include black lace corsets, pleated skirts, and then just Wednesday Addams themed t-shirts. So the target demographic was females aged 15 to 25, middle to lower class, to lower middle class, high school or early college education level, and access to a Netflix account or those who have seen the TV show. And they're usually interested in this dark academia aesthetic, which goes along with the show. Awesome. Next for branding. So branding affects building identity specifically directly because identity is reflected externally through every outward expression of the brand. So this is logos, products, displays, social media content, anything that the brand puts out there to identify itself. And then building loyalty, customer drawn to the brand due to value or ethos. So that's kind of how loyalty is made. It's not as much just connecting with the product, but consumers want to connect with the brand and their values. And consistency is really key for loyalty aspect. So it's not just staying in touch with customers and reaching out half the time and then stopping. You really need to be consistent in order to build that strong loyalty. Next, building emotional connections. Ethos, pathos, logos is a good example of that. Promotional mix. We have advertising, sales promotion, which is tactics such as like discounts, loyalty cards I have up there. Public relations, so PR campaigns working with influencers and others like that. And personal selling, which is like door-to-door salesmen, potential customers, one-on-one interactions with your customers. Okay, and then the consumer decision-making process diagram. This kind of goes through the recognition of need to information search, evaluation of alternatives, purchase decision, and lastly, post-purchase evaluation. That's kind of the process that consumers go through when making their decision to buy. This is a really good chart that I just like that describes how trends move through a population from innovators, starting with them and ending. And then when a customer becomes an adopter of a brand or product, it can affect their purchasing decision process. Awesome. So for sustainability as a whole, how it impacts marketing strategies, I kind of broke it up in 3 different ways. One, brand authenticity, target brand logos, and then positioning. So for brand authenticity, greenwashing and such with the trending of sustainability is really going to impact marketing strategies, and companies are going to start using the word sustainability even if it doesn't mean anything to them and what they're doing. Secondly, social media. with this being a really trending way to utilize marketing strategies, influencer marketing is going to be heavily emphasized, and used, almost overused possibly, just because that is a very efficient way to target a certain customer segment if you find an influencer who all of their followers are in that target segment. So a couple takeaways to end the video. So first off, I really like this diagram of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It shows for fashion motivators for customers often stem from psychological belongings, esteem, and self-actualization. So although there's basic need for human clothing, for protection, etc., motivation for fashion is driven mainly by a lot of others' desires, like self-acceptance. Second takeaway, I love this quote that we learned about in a lecture. Products are made in the factory, but brands are created in the mind. Brand identity and marketing is so psychological, and unlike what most people think, customers most of the time don't buy products just due to the item, but they buy it mostly because they love the brand and they love the values and they identify with the brand is a huge part of marketing in general. And takeaway 3, the way your brand is marketed will never be exactly how the consumers think of the brand or company. There's so many outward factors that play a role on how a consumer perceives your brand, which is a really good visual of what that looks like from the lecture, just due to what you want them to how you want them to think about the brand, and then how they actually perceive it. Thank you so much. And those are my key terms.